Hello out there. This is Mandia on Astral Oracles, and I'm going to do a channeling on choices. But it's difficult. No, I think it's really, really difficult. And usually I'm a double Libra and codependent and all that good shit. So I have a hard time deciding anything, and like unfortunately I feel like often I'm very much jacked into my intuition. So sort of the wave or the motion of existence carries me along and brings me into the places that I want to go. But like sometimes you're just faced with making really hard choices, and especially if you have several alternatives. And so I'm having these days down here because I really don't know if I want to, stay here, or go do another option, or go home and sort of deal with things that I feel like I should perhaps actually have dealt with before I ran away to to a foreign country, right? So it's that weird thing of actually coming into a place where you have to decide. And unfortunately today I've been lucky enough to receive a lot of 1111s and other master numbers, but I feel like I've never just been bombarded with them at the amount that I am right now. And of course that's lovely when you decide to like write off one of the opportunities and then you only have a couple left, right? So at least that makes for fewer balls to juggle. But at the same time, I something I think about a lot is I think it's really interesting that it's actually quite impossible to gauge the consequences of our actions. And what I often return to is the fact that the most influential human being ever, or at least in the last 2000 years, died like as a religious fanatic, abandoned by basically everyone in a um, backwater of the Roman Empire, filled with deserts and crazy fanatics, right? So like that idea that well, you never really know what consequences you have. And of course Jesus, Peter, Paul were three criminals who were all put to death, or Jesus and Muhammad and Buddha, the three great founders of three different missionary religious traditions, were of course like all basically right off losers at some point in their life, who would rather spend their time sitting in a cave trying to speak to invisible forces and align themselves with that, right? And then it turns out that for some reason that seems to also be something important, at least something that really, really is able to influence a lot of people and shape a lot of things about the way we construe the world and where it's moving. So that's just to say that nobody really knows anything, and we can never speak of what the day brought until the sun has set, and that's just this difficult thing about being a being in time. And then you see, I even have to make a choice about who, which entity to bring forward, because I think that's difficult. But again, being born on Saint Michael's day, that accursed Libra, let's try to bring in the Archangel Michael, because he's also the way of the souls, the one who holds in the balances in the scales in his hand, and I think so. So let's see what he can teach us about that, because he's good to call upon when things are hard to figure out and there are many influences going on at once. And I hope you're well out there. Thank you for watching and being with me. Yes, I bring you the love of the heavens and the blessings of the beyond and the above. Greetings from Source to you. You are always being greeted. There's always a great big hello resounding in your existence, in the back of your head, in reverberating in your heart, buzzing in your feet. That great hello of the everything that's guiding you and carrying you forward. And frustrating as it may be to hear, this is the signal that carries you forward. But see, choice assumes another quality as you move into multidimensional existence, as we believe it has been communicated through this vessel before we sense the passage of this message through this mind. There are many ways to fulfill the same objectives. And of course, your objective is only to explore, expand, integrate, bring together what was once disunited. These are all objectives that you have as an incarnated being and soul expressing itself through a personality and a body. And therefore, these things, they will be examined, they will be looked at, they will be played out in the theater of existence. And all this is being watched and observed by you as you have these difficulties resolving what you want to do. It's the eternal question, isn't it? It seems almost as pertinent as who am I, or what am I, or what am I doing here, or what is the world made of? What am I to do? Yes, first there is the what, but how are you going to figure out the what when you don't even have a grasp of the real things that surround you? I say this fondly, but your understanding of physics is still somewhat limited. And we know, perhaps more relatable to the mind that is translating this message for us now, we know that it is almost impossible to describe the complexity of one moment or one simple situation, the objects feeding into it, the circumstances surrounding those objects, the stories that relate to them, the stories that relate to the animal body, the situation it finds itself in, its level of rest, its level of hydration, its level of contentment. There are so many different aspects feeding into any one situation. And so when you select, you do select out of criteria that cannot be fully conscious to you. It would simply be a too overwhelming process to be conscious and at the same time actually picking out a piece of the total field to bring your consciousness towards and center your actions towards to express yourself. And see, this is essentially what you do when you speak of choice. You bring one trajectory that has already been gauged, approached in your mind. You bring it into focused attention, and there you begin to direct the most direct form of energy you have to apply in your existence down here. That is physical energy, the energy of action, the energy flowing through the moving body and being applied to the intentions of the mind being then set into the world. And notice that this choice it is rarely, if ever, actually what you may think of as a free choice in the abstract. That is to say, it's always informed by circumstances, and it's almost always a negotiation with, let us say, different parts of humanity. That is that your choices, other people, well, they either rely upon them, they expect something from you as a consequence of what choices you make, or their actions will be influenced by them, and the actions of the world as a whole will be shaped by what choices you make. That is to say, if you decide to go to the airport on the 17th instead of the 18th, well, you will be interacting perhaps with slightly different people, also having a slightly different day on that day, and therefore you might actually see that the spirals, well, spinning out from your interactions with these people, they also have ramifications for other people. And this is, of course, that thing that's expressed in the idiom of chaos theory, that when a butterfly flaps its wings in Mexico, it sets off a typhoon in a chain reaction that results in a typhoon in Indonesia. It's that idea that it's impossible to predict the effects or the currents running through a hole. And this is why the tradition of Buddhism, for instance, teaches you the idea that this is and that arises. There is, in a sense, no sense of causality in this universe. It's the idea that since everything is all one, everything is constantly being informed by the intentions being willed into action at this point. And that is also why you can actually make these energetic detours. So you can make the wrong choices, so to speak. And those choices, they're wrong in the perspective that they lead you astray from the agenda that you actually hold dear within yourself and that you wish to explore in this lifetime, and that you are trying to circle back to a higher vibration in order to realize. And this is what you might think of as the idea of fate, which is expressed in a lot of traditions, the idea that there is a type of woven thread that you follow blindly, feeling yourself being pulled into the unknown of age, of lifetime, of different complex situations, of challenges. And these knots on this thread, you read them like braille, you have no full comprehension, no visionary comprehension of what they are all at once. And so instead, you have to feel yourself piecing one point of unevenness together with another point of unevenness until it makes up a whole image that might give you the harmonic intention or meaning behind all the points that you were feeling out as you were reading that thread of the fates or that page of braille, the image that I used to describe it. So these are all images, and I am still simply pointing to a lot of the difficulties that arise around this concept of choice. And at the same time, we have stressed that your mind is making choices. So the idea here, and this has also been brought forward, we believe it was by our Arcturian friends who are quite insightful in many matters, but the idea that it's the collapse of the wave function. So, and yes, well, the vessel is asking us to point the caveat that he's not sure this is the expression, but we're using the expression. So we're pointing again to that famous cat in the box, or the Schrodinger's cat. So the idea that the choice that is being made by your higher self in this is what reality it wants to experience. And it's doing this before the mind body complex, or that thing you perceive as you, actually perceives it. So there is the infinite multiverse of possibilities open before the box is actually opened and it's registered whether or not the cat is dead or not. So it's not necessarily an act of randomness when those, you believe, radioactive isotopes then bombard the cat and either kill it with radiation or doesn't, but it's actually your spiritual self choosing what is the most right experience for you to have. And that's, of course, also why it's worth relying on the fact that you're already always having the experience that you most wish for, painful as it may be, and that these trajectories and agendas that are followed, well, they trans they yes, they transcend lifetimes. And that's why some of the adverse effects that you are having in one lifetime, they may be they may actually be serving other patterns and other experiences being had in simultaneous or previous or future lifetimes in other existences. And that is, of course, difficult. Also, notice there is the principle of, we could say, radical experience. This is a principle that most humans are not necessarily fully comfortable with expressing, and or even thinking about, and rightly so, because it is very extreme to realize that from the perspective of source or the oversoul, there is simply something worth exploring in the extremities of what a human nervous system can undergo. And so this is, of course, expressed in the positive, but seeing that you are a species who also focuses on the negative, you would also see that, well, the experiments of, for instance, radical torture or genocide or cruelty, a lot of these things are seen from an eternal perspective and a non-human perspective, something that is interesting for the collective data bank of the universe to have experienced. But this, of course, does not mean that this is preferred reality. And so, circling back to the circumstance that you call choice, the idea being that, how do you then make the higher self, or how does the higher self create alignment between the mind body complex that is you and its own intentions? And how does this bring about the most, let us say, preferred reality, a reality that is not adversely experienced by you? Well, the trick is to become more and more vibratory. And so that is why that idiom of going with your gut is quite helpful, because you know that your stomach usually vibrates, and it vibrates in many different patterns, and you learn to discern this as you grow older, that there are things that you may feel your stomach is calling out for, that you are aware is a sort of a vibratory pattern, or feeding a scratching an itch that's better left unscratched. And for instance, that is, if you really, well, if you want a lot of sugars and fats and those types of things who are not good for you and will make you feel bad afterwards, you are aware that this is a type of vibratory pattern that exists within you, but that you prefer not to explore further. um, and of course you can go into it, and then you can have the contrast experience, that which is essentially that, oh, now I ate so much now I ate so much horrible stuff that I really feel sick, and that taught me the lesson that I'd rather do something else, with my choices another time. But you are also aware that there are a lot of vibratory patterns who are calling in for something hungry, something positive, something that's more rewarding in the long run. and where you train yourself through experience and simply by living to become aware that, well, maybe it won't fill the gap in quite the same way if I have a snack of, I don't know, carrots or walnuts or whatever, but it will lift up my spirits in general. It will, well, give me higher energy levels. I will feel much better when I wake up tomorrow. And those are some of, well, the ways you become vibratory. And so relating to the will of other people, there you always have a vibratory pattern. And that's why that heart tapping is so helpful, because when you go with your viscera, your gut, and you open your heart, you can sense what kind of energies are being communicated to the world. And sometimes you might want to engage with energies that aren't very preferential to you or that you don't harmonize with. But there it's also helpful to know that the more you strengthen your energy field, the more this will be an experience where you don't pick up the unwanted things, but you instead also learn to maintain a higher energy within things that might be out of resonance. And therefore know that even though you can't make the wrong choice, you can accelerate your process greatly. And of course, uh, why accelerate something that's all about exploration? Well, because there's also a part of you that likes to be in contact with the true you, the resonance, the vibration of you, the resonance of harmony, of understanding, of enlightenment, of connection, of feeling at home. And these are vibrations that you can align with in this lifetime. And it's very helpful because there is an overall agenda of humankind also having moved from some of those darker realms we experienced and then becoming preoccupied with higher types of vibrations. And that project you have also signed up to be a part of, and you really want to be a part of, and you want to connect with people around these energies. And the more you carry that high vibration, the more you will begin to see the world, well, sparking change around you, changing, becoming something that is more preferred. And that means that, well, even though you may sense that the world is also somewhat of a mess, well, you can still inhabit a very acceptable, and we might also say almost shiny part of it, something that vibrates with the inner vibration of you in harmony. I sense this has been a helpful and hopeful message, not only for this vessel who was seeking advice, but also for others who might listen. And we know it is eternal advice that we bring you. It is often repeated, but you do well in connecting with our energies and vibrations. And you do even better when you connect to that beautiful, loving harmony that is yourself. And therefore, seat yourself within, literally within all the life, all the condensed loving functions that combined uphold your life, and know that they are able to make the right choices for you. So when the mind fails, then listen to the organs, because they are very powerful in their smooth operations. And by that, you will also become a smooth operator. You will choose effortlessly, and you will sail with the wind on your back. Yes, I, Archangel Michael, I have been happy to transmit this message to you. I am always happy to become present wherever humankind may seek my assistance, protection, guidance, strength, and love. I extend blessings to you from the heavens, and I leave you in love this day. Yes. always nice with some angel backing.